Everybody, I hope you have an amazing time wherever you are in the world. I'm delighted that we have got Professor Hamamoto, Cultural Forensics, with us this evening. And I know many of you are always saying, when's the professor coming back on? Well, here he is, and it's always a great delight. He's got such a soothing voice, I find, and his energy and his warmth. It's just a really nice person to speak to. You certainly are. And all of the professor's links are in the description box. So many of you saw, I think it was Saturday night, we put out the full 6 hours DOJ interview with Maxwell, but we've not actually done any commentary on it yet. And the professors watched most of it as well. So we are going to start out with that subject. That is part of the network. If you guys have got any questions about what the professor is an expert on, the intelligence and rap and music and the infiltration of intelligence in academia, etc. And we've also got the bibliography in the description box. Don't hesitate to put your question in the chat, please. But great to see you, my friend.
Mr. Atwood, thank you so much for the invitation. Hello, friends and neighbors around the world. We're going to have a great conversation today.
When you were watching Maxwell, then, what were you thinking about the energy coming off her and the way she was speaking? Because she was really giggly in parts.
Yeah.
Very posh, very using very highfalutin words.
Oh, yes.
Stuff. And
I wanted to address that. You have the clash of cultures and the complementarity of cultures. You have Oxford. She mentions her British accent in passing a little bit. It's not just British, it's Oxfordian. All right. She went to undergraduate school. She is posh. She's fancy. But on the other end, you have one Todd Blanche. And this is part of my cultural forensics methodology. I look at the periphery people. Remember when we talked about Sean John Combs? We looked at Maureen Comey and we looked at Tina Garagos, the people who seemingly are at the periphery. But these are the ones who are orchestrating this little dance, this pas de deux, right? This little performance. And that's what it is. I think everybody sees this thanks to people such as yourself, who's written extensively about this. We'll get back to this book in a moment. And then your friend, your colleague, my friend, Kirby Summers. And I just mentioned this at the outset because I do not want people to be demoralized by this, what seems to be culminating in another miscarriage of justice or injustice, the Department of Justice, the U.S. DOJ. Because when it gets down to it, the people's court wins, right? We have a permanent, thanks to you, thanks to people like Kirby Summers. There are others. You had Mr. Andrew Lowney the other day. Great conversations, by the way. I read his books, and his most recent one on the House of York is en route. And I encourage you to buy these books because, as I've learned, the editors, the powerful editors, the people who are in charge of X and all the publishing houses are already starting to alter the text. The ebook version of that book by Andrew Lowney is different from the hard copy. So I ordered the hard copy. I'm going to have the original. It's going to be a collector's item. So always get the hard copy. There's a reason why and I'm not saying don't buy the ebooks, okay? Don't get me wrong. But there's a reason why they're called Kindle, because it's kindling. We need the hard copy. This is the people's court. This is the court of public opinion. This is really what matters. The little puppet show that we just witnessed a couple days ago or heard about and read the transcripts, and I thank Kirby Summers for sending. I'm a subscriber to her Substack. She sent everything over, the audio and the printed files, the court transcripts. So I went through them, fairly carefully. And one thing I noticed is that it's kind of like softcore porn. intentionally so. This guy, I forgot to finish my thought about Oxford versus, I think he's from the Midwest someplace, Todd Blanche. He went to Brooklyn Law School. Okay, he went to Brooklyn Law School. And the other character, David Oscar Marks, he's, of course, a magna cum laude graduate of, guess what, Harvard University. So you have this social class division here that's not really a fair contest, right? Because you can tell by his intonation, the way he addresses the well-spoken, posh Ghislaine Maxwell, that he feels like he's her social subordinate. He is a knave to the princess. This is how I read it from a cultural forensic standpoint. I'm looking at sociolex, I'm looking at educational background, socialization, social network of the peripheral people, the courtiers, the people like Todd Blanche. And most of you know, your viewers know, that Todd Blanche is intimately related professionally, maybe even personally, to one Donald John Trump. I don't have to review that again. Most of you know this already. So there seems to be, from the get-go, to put it lightly, a conflict of interest. Plus, but we can also see, because we're perceptive by now, we've trained ourselves to see through the shuck over the last several years, thanks to, ironically, social medias, right? We were able to see that these people here are trying to negotiate a soft landing for Ghislaine Maxwell. And she's already been transported, I think, to someplace in Texas. She's on sort of limited supervision. She's not in the big house anymore. She's not wearing her prison orange. She's doing better than country club type of life. And they're going to wait until, I think we're talking about they, meaning Trump, his people, they're going to wait till the holidays to let her out, because it's not far off. It's August is almost over. And then he could also make it like I'm forgiving you in the spirit of the holidays, and people will have forgotten by now. There's going to be a new scandal by that time that's going to erupt. In fact, the scandal by the end of the year might be more closely focused on Donald J. Trump himself. He blew it. He tried to sweep it under the rug like he's done for most of his professional and personal life. But he wasn't the president of the United States at the time. Now he is. The eyes of the world, not just the American people, the eyes of the world is fixed carefully on what and how Trump handles this latest adversity that he's being faced. And Todd Blanche is not going to be able to pull his Willie out of the ringer this time. He's trapped. Because Todd Blanche is, I don't know if you picked this up from you have to hear the audio versions of the day and a half worth of hearings or the proffer discussion. But he's on her side. You mentioned, Mr. Atwood, at the outset how giggly she was. This is a club. They're friends. They're talking amongst themselves. But courtroom procedure requires that they provide a printed transcript and the audio one if necessary, so that we, the public, can hear this. Because if all this was going on in secret, which they would have preferred, we would have assumed that there was justice that's being done. But now, for all the world to see, we're understanding how justice is really dispensed in certain courtroom situations, not for the hoi polloi like us, the normal people, but for those who are of this stature. This is the type of justice they can get. So let's take a look at, if we may, at the other principal who came from Harvard, and that is David Oscar Marx. Well, it's all one giant daisy chain. He's a protege of one Alan Dershowitz. That was a professor of his at Harvard Law. So it's one giant daisy chain connected. Now there's another it's not even a subtext. It's out there up front and center, but MSM is not going to cover it. Indie News does to a certain degree, but I'm going to put it right out there. There's a third party that's involved in this whole discussion, and that's the state of Israel, right? Last time I was on, we talked about our mutual great influence, Mr. Gordon Thomas, right? And his intense study of not just British, but Israeli and American intelligence establishment, right? And I talked about the concept of the Saim. It's a Hebrew word. Write that down, jot it down, look it up. Saim. And literally it means helper or assistant. But more politically, it means someone who's on the inside that's going to help you get your case through, right? And that's who David Oscar Marx is. He is a Saim, just like Alan Dershowitz is a Saim. He's proud about it. He's written books on it. He speaks to it. He is the king of chutzpah. He wrote a book called Chutzpah. Right. And this whole calling of the trial by this Harvard graduate, David Oscar Marx, is the ultimate in chutzpah. Well, I take it back. This takes a second place probably to Lyle and Eric Menendez saying, please let us out. We blew away our parents, but now we're orphans. So please forgive us, right? Of course, they're the ones who created the orphan situation, but that's the definition of chutzpah. So we're seeing Alan Dershowitz's jurisprudence, Saim jurisprudence in action. Now, this is one of the important lessons that I want to communicate to your above average audience. There's a geopolitical subtext in operation. If you spring Ghislaine Maxwell, you're also springing the state of Israel. You're also springing, you're disentangling Donald Trump, or you're getting him out of the trap that he's set for himself, or he fell into with his relationship, his business relationships, continuing political and personal relationships with Israel and the intelligence agencies. He does belong to intelligence. As one of your hosts has agreed to, this is the accurate characterization. So this is David Oscar Marx. If you want to check out his website, he's really good at the socials. He's a younger man, so he knows the value of TikTok and Instagram and having a blog and a YouTube channel and all that. I mean, they cover it all now. He probably has some really well-trained interns working for him at his office that are revolutionizing the way the criminal law is being practiced for a certain class, a certain set in Anglo-American society. So he's got it all nailed down. However, he did not account for someone like a Sean Atwood. He did not account for someone like a Professor Hamamoto, who's been studying this for decades, looking at it from the inside out, and who's able to break it down methodically, institutionally, through a methodology that he's perfected over the years that he calls cultural forensics, right? That's how we achieve justice. This is how we get the satisfaction of having these miscreants receive their true due justice in the eyes of God, right? And you informed me, and I checked furiously really quickly before this cast begin that there's going to be a new book out, The Memoirs of Virginia Giuffre. Let's not forget her. She is one of the key parties in this whole discussion, this proper agreement, but her name is, I don't think uttered it even once. All the victims are conveniently left out of the talk. And the transcripts, by the way, the printed ones, the written ones, transcribed ones, it has an index there for the people who can get a hold. You can see proper names and places and themes, and you can check and go right to the place where they talk about certain figures, including one Ehud Barak. His name is raised in volume 1 of it, Ehud Barak. And what does Todd Blanche do? As soon as the name comes, he just moves on to the next topic. What is his favorite topic in the whole day and a half discussion? There's a copy of the book. It's by Nigel. Oh, that's a previous book, isn't it? Nigel.
Is that the previous one?
Yes, I think so. Because what I read is that the new one was edited or co-authored by a woman by the name of Amy Wallace.
You are right. Let me get that one.
However, I mean, let me take this time to ask the question. I thought Amy Wallace was dead. I recognize the name. She's a prominent author. She's the daughter of a previous generation popular novelist by the name of Irving Wallace. The family name is Walachinsky. She has a brother named David Walachinsky, who wrote a really nice book, The Class of 65, truly Americana. Amy Wallace and her brother David wrote a book called The Book of Lists. So anyway, she has a bona fide. She's a publishing insider, Amy Wallace. So again, I will go back to my opening statement. This is how we're going to get justice, by these types of publications that are going to outlive the memory of these transcripts that were recently released by the so-called U.S. Department of Justice. This case is not going to die. Donald Trump's people have to get together and figure out how they're going to get around this issue. This could sink his administration. He will lose whatever moral authority and ethical capital that he's been able to amass over the past several years, primarily based on the fact that the election was stolen from him, and the fact that they took a shot at him once or twice, and he survived the assassination attempts. Right? You have our sympathy, Mr. President, for that, but you have to account for all the legitimate questions that are being raised so far as your personal and professional conduct is concerned, because a voice is speaking to the American and the world public from out of the grave. Her name is Virginia Roberts Giuffre. And
let me just give people. Let me just give them a bit of detail on the book,
please.
So, a posthumous and unsparing memoir will be published this fall. Publishing house Alfred Knopf said, "Nobody's Girl: A Memoir of Surviving Abuse and Fighting for Justice." The release date is scheduled for October the 21st. Publisher confirmed. Virginia had been working on Nobody's Girl with author journalist Amy Wallace and had completed the manuscript for the 400-page book. The publisher's statement includes an email from Virginia to Wallace a few weeks before her death, saying that it was her heartfelt wish the memoir be released regardless of her circumstances. The contents of this book is crucial as it aims to shed light on the systemic failures that allow the tracking of vulnerable individuals across borders, her email read. It is imperative that the truth is understood and that the issues surrounding this topic are addressed, both for the sake of justice and awareness. Well said, Virginia.
Well, if your producer can possibly obtain a advanced copy of the book, like a PDF, please send it to me. I'll review it, and I'll come back on the show and give a preview, an assessment. This is going to be an important piece of work.
That would be great. Can I just ask you a couple of questions, though, about some of the things that you've said so far? Because you've raised some really important points. I mean, you know, the Epstein case is so old. Who would have seen it put the administration in this position it's in presently? And yes, you know, we eat, live, and breathe this, Professor, but even for the average person on the street, when an administration campaigns on countering the human transportation of kids, and they're going to do all these resources, increase the laws, go after these SOBs, and then the poster child for those SOBs is incarcerated, then all of a sudden, the very people who were professing to, you know, go after these people and put them away for long periods of time are now kowtowing to the poster child, Maxwell, the human transporter poster child person, kowtowing to her, putting her in a soft prison, rewarding her, instead of going up to the survivors and sitting down with the survivors and putting people higher up the ladder in prison. I mean, that just is a slap on the face to everybody that supported this administration on the basis they were campaigning to go after these people.
And you know, the everyday person on the street, they're feeling that same sense of betrayal, profound, because everybody can relate to abused people. A lot of people in just walking around never got their justice, having been battered or exploited as children or as women or whatever group that's vulnerable out there, so-called unaccompanied immigrant children. They've been abused as well. And this has touched every single segment of the American and really the world population as well. So we resonate that this is why we meaning the general population. I'm sure there's some people who are callously indifferent to it, but for the most part, we're all invested in it. And this is why it's not going away. And Donald Trump and his people are not going to be able to sweet talk us or finesse his way out of this. So I want to propose certain concrete strategies that the people's court can enact to show our displeasure, to voice it, because we're not going to wait for the ballot box. We can, at any public appearance or a news conference, whenever Donald Trump shows up, we will just turn our backs on him silently. And he'll know that we are rejecting everything that's coming out of his lying mouth. And the whole whitewash. Turn your back on him. That's a silent protest. Right. I've already mentioned the fact, okay, you keep publishing and keep doing the cast. This is the information. This is why the case has not died, because of truly independent journalism. And the other part of the process is to look at the criminal justice system itself, especially its adjunct criminology. And this is what I've been doing over the past couple of weeks in my own show. I talked about the cult of academic criminology. Now, criminology in America, and I want to compare notes with you, Sean, whether it's going on in the UK in the same way, but it's been captured by the DEI people, criminology. They're still yucking it up over there. But in the meantime, there's a whole generation of professionals, people who are going to be in the law, in the counseling professions, in law enforcement, legislators at the undergraduate level, taking courses in criminology, which is a hugely, at least in America, expanding major. And what is it all about? It's about supposed systemic racism that should mean that we should get rid of the police and go soft on criminals. And we've seen, this is something that Donald Trump has done for the positive. We've seen in the past week that Washington, D.C., for the first time in a long while, has had a 0 homicide week. Right. And of course, the people on the left, the Democratic Party, they hate that because that's their clientele. So we have to be very careful that while we're holding the president to account, we're not also feeding into MSNBC, who are celebrating this chaos, this sort of civil war within MAGA about what's going on with Donald Trump's promise to release the files, to protect vulnerable populations from exploitation of the S variety and the human, cargo system. He was going to do all that, right? So that's the difficulty that we're facing. But on an individual level, we can express our dissatisfaction by going public with our reservations or criticism about the Trump administration and his minions, from Pam Bondi to Kash Patel to Dan Bongino. They're rank amateurs, all of them. And they might be on the way out, from what I can understand anyway. And just keep putting the information out there and making sense of it, pouring through the transcripts and giving our assessment. Todd Grandy, I mean, the whole conversation sounds so pervy to me. It's a little perverted conversation that you might have heard down in Palm Beach, right, at one of these estates. A little private conversation amongst themselves, because Todd Grandy, being from the boonies, being from Brooklyn Law School, he didn't just go to law school, he went to night school, right? And I'm not disparaging that. More credit to him. He had to come up the hard way. The point I'm making is that he over-identifies with the class of people that he's pretending to bring to justice. He's on their side of the table. And that, in essence, is what the whole bar is about anyway, isn't it? That's why it's called the bar. They're on the other side. David Oscar Marks, Todd Blanche, they're on the other side of the bar. We are on this other. They're not in combat with each other. They're in combat with us. We have to wrap our minds around the realities, right? The realities of Dickens started out as a law clerk himself, right? He knew it as a young man. He got to witness it. He wrote about it. This is not news to anybody who's halfway literate. This is part of our political culture. So we should be mature enough to recognize it when we sing it now in 2025. Especially now when we have the social medias at our disposal to disseminate this information almost immediately.
So why are you saying then that the administration is trapped by the Epstein story? Is that because they are all beholden to intelligence? So they've gestured that they're going to do something, but intelligence has come in and said, The
simple answer is yes. Donald Trump likes to use this phrase, well, you don't hold the cards, I hold the cards. Well, I'll invoke that phrase to say he doesn't hold the cards. Tel Aviv holds the cards. Bibi Netanyahu holds the cards, right? He is an American agent, by the way, who's masquerading as an Israeli. He went to high school in America. His name's not Netanyahu. He gave himself an Israeli name so he could pass in that capacity, right? So we have some really interesting ethno-religio politics going on here that a lot of media doesn't want to talk about because they want to be accused of prejudice, religio-ethnic prejudice right here. But you have to look at it honestly and see what's really going on here. Right, going back through Robert Maxwell, one of his many identities, we all know his story by now. He belonged to intelligence. Ghislaine Maxwell belonged to intelligence. Jeffrey Epstein belonged to intelligence. They're all part of this same network. And I think the reason why a lot of MAGA types are hanging on to this because it's just the reality that America has been captured and is now a client state of Israel. The great United States is captured. It's mind-boggling because we've been told for the last 70 years that the United States is the empire that rules the world, right? But as it turns out, the United States and its vast military and its economic resources has been used as a cat's paw for a poor little nation surrounded by violent, terroristic Arab states, the only democracy in the Middle East. Oh, please. Right. And this
what about
is what
the role? But what about the role of the deep state in this? Couldn't it be argued that Israel is just an instrument of the deep state, and the deep state is the globalist hub?
The deep state is Israel. They're one and the same. And of course, if you mention that, they're going to say, just like you use the term Siyim, I looked it up in the Jewish American lexicon, and if you use the word Siyim, it's supposed to be a anti-Semitic term, like as if it's some giant conspiracy. But the deep state is captured, and even in the right-wing media, they won't admit that, because you know who they like to blame? They like to blame the yellow man. They say it's the Chacoms are doing it.
Well, all right. Let's look at, if we look at the war in Ukraine, which I believe is, Ukraine's just being used as a proxy by the deep state to attack Russia and try and break Russia up. Then, that's the deep state I see, doing its thing. But that's not Israel, is it? Israel's not involved in that. So there's a lot more going on to the deep state than just Israel. That's my point.
Well, the Ukraine is Eretz Israel, greater Israel. Israel was not going to be Israel where it is currently. They were looking for sites. I'm talking about the classical Zionists like Theodor Herzl. They were looking for places in Latin America and Africa. So they said, well, let's go to the British Mandate in Palestine. There's a whole history behind this, right? But they've always, in fact, the ancestral home of Zionism is what is today called Ukraine, Kiev, and all these people. But it's also not coincidentally, it's an important point. It's not only the homeland, and that's why this war is going on. This should be clear what's going on here in Ukraine, Russia, the United States, Israel, right? It's not just the political homeland of Zionism, Ukraine, right? Kiev, places like this, but it's also the homeland of Zabbatai Zvi and Yakub Frank, as in Sabbatean Frankist. So you have a metaphysical occult system that underlies the political Zionism. We're only looking at